snow.
Yeah, and as we've discussed, you know, it was Reagan who moved the inaugural from the East Front to the West, right? And 1981, President Reagan's first inaugural, I think it was like 55 degrees outside. It was a fine day. And then Reagan's second inaugural, 1985, 7 degrees here in Washington. They had to move that indoors at the last minute.
Well, members of Congress are filing in and other dignitaries. Can we hear what? The band?
You can hear the Marine Band, you sure can. They've already started up there. They've got a long day of performance ahead of them here. It really is a full concert that they're going to be delivering. We're going to hear some familiar tunes from them. They've also have prepared a couple of special ones for the occasion. Marches from John Philip Sousa. And the Marine Band, actually those uniforms they're wearing, those are most similar to what they would have been wearing in the time of President Grant and John Philip Sousa.
I can tell you, having served in the armed forces, wool in the summer, no fun. This is great weather. Great weather for military personnel. I'd rather have it 40 degrees and below than 80 degrees and above.
Yeah, we lucked out with the weather today. I was looking at some tales of former inaugurations, and of course, you know, we'll be hearing from the first ever Youth Poet Laureate a little bit later on today. I know, incredible young lady, just 22 years of age, I think, maybe
Amanda
23.
Gorham, yes.
Amanda Gorham. And Robert Frost was the first poet who was invited to speak at the inaugural 1961 for President Kennedy. Frost had composed a poem for the occasion, but the glare coming off of the fresh snow, the glare was too bright. He couldn't actually read his own notes. They tried to help him out. Somebody held a top hat over to create a little shadow, and he still wasn't able to read his notes. So 89 years old, the poet Robert Frost actually recited one of his other poems from memory.
You know, Janet, we haven't talked about them too much, and we will later. United States Capitol Police. This is pride of them. We have order, we have discipline. Things are moving as they should. So they take pride in this particular part.
So this is the time when we see people arriving for these ceremonies. We know folks are starting to take their seats out on the West Front. And we're going to be seeing various people arriving here, coming underneath. That, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is President Obama.
You're not mistaken.
Arriving. And, of course, Michelle Obama there, a beautiful plum coat going into the Capitol underneath one of those porticos.
He never wears a hat.
You know, I never noticed that, but you're right.
You know, the members of Congress used to wear their hats inside the chambers, and then that stopped.
Everybody wore hats in the 19th century. Lincoln, actually, the first inauguration he attended was Zachary Taylor's in 1849. And President Lincoln actually lost his top hat in the massive crowds because, you know, their inaugural balls and parties, these events, especially in earlier times in the 19th century, there were massive public events that people would come to Washington, flock from all around to. Of course, this year, things are quite different.
Mm-hmm. Friends, there is such a thing called Capitol Conversations, and it's something that our colleagues do during this time of closure of the Capitol. So visit thecapitol.gov, log on, look at our previous recordings, but all that we're talking about, we will do this over and over throughout the year until we're open. Let's see who's surviving now. I know what people are thinking. Are you making this up as you go? Well, right now I am, yes.
Well, it's you know, we're talking about people arriving.
William Jefferson Clinton.
There he is, President Clinton arriving there.
Senator Clinton can't be far away.
I would imagine. Again, they're pulling up to the east front of the Capitol, where inaugurations used to be held. JFK, Lincoln, Andrew Jackson. Until 1981, moved to the West Front so that more people could attend, so that more people could see, right? We looked down the National Mall earlier. You could see how there was room for people to watch from all kinds of different angles and to really fill up that space. Of course, things are a little bit different this year than they have been for inaugurations past.
You know, I just thought of a trivia question, and it's how many left-handed presidents have we had? William Jefferson Clinton is left-handed.
Oh.
We'll think of it. We'll
How
we might
many
work on that.
left-handed presidents?
How many
okay,
left-handed-
folks, you're going to write that one down. You're going to go to your favorite search engine.
Oh, the beautiful East Front.
Now, before inaugurations happened at the Capitol, when the Capitol still wasn't built, or after it was burned by the British in the War of 1812, presidents inaugurated other sites. So, Ron, as you mentioned earlier, across the street from us, the Supreme Court's current
Yes.
building, right on the site where President James Monroe was inaugurated. The Marine Band here. And we're going to be hearing from the Marine
Friends,
Band.
we've talked so much about them. Let's listen to our beloved Marine Band for just a little while.
So we get another arrival here, folks, coming off the buses. These are the Biden and Harris families arriving here. Everybody getting ready to go to their seats out on the west front for today's 59th inaugural ceremonies. Gonna look a little bit different than previous years, but this part is the same. Busloads of folks coming up, everybody bundled up for the weather.
Not unfamiliar to President-elect Biden because as Vice President.
Yes, absolutely. Good point.
So, you know, think about this for a second. In terms of coming into a presidency, think of all the congressional experience he has in comparison to what, everyone else, right? Who has more experience coming into the president? This has to be quite a moment for his family to come back yet again, but this time to be sworn in as commander-in-chief.
These folks probably know their way around the hill pretty well, yeah, and this is something that we see in previous inaugurations, right? Their arrivals here. Again, we're on the east front here with the buses pulling up, so these folks will have to travel through the Capitol, across to the other side and out onto the west front, onto the platform.
I can't emphasize this is enough. This is a shot you don't see. This is not something you see from the networks. This particular angle to the Senate side of the Capitol, what we call the carriage door.
Yeah, watching the Biden family coming in like this, you can see up underneath the porticos there. All of the, you can see some Capitol Police officers there as well. You're absolutely right, Ron. This is an angle that nobody else has. We have cameras, I think close to 30 cameras around for this JSIC live stream today. They're in places that other networks don't necessarily have, or the networks don't necessarily have. Press pool. Oh,
look
like
at this. The
line.
East Vestibule. That looks like Senator Schumer's posture.
It sure
and behind
does.
him would be Senator Mitch McConnell.
We've got Steny Hoyer there with the reddish scarf with, I think, a navy blue jacket. So what we're looking at here, this is actually the east front door. So this is just behind those doors at the top of the stairs. So just to orient yourselves, folks, this is just outside the rotunda. It almost acts as a little kind of a vestibule to the rotunda. Behind the cameraman there in our frame, his back is into the entrance to the rotunda, the east side. Back on the east front, another arrival. We got a bus pulling up here.
I love those steps. Now that's the House
Those
side.
are the House steps there.
And for those that were looking at the top and said, what are those figures? That is called the apotheosis of democracy. It's a pediment. It was sculpted by Paul Bartlett from the state of Ohio.
The inside and outside of the building, just adorned with sculpture, allegorical sculpture, a lot of it, you know, representing not necessarily specific people, but representing ideas. Just like today is, as Chairman Blunt said, you know, an assurance of our continued and unbroken commitment to continuity, stability, perseverance, democracy. The outside of the building, the architecture itself suggests permanence, stability.
Yes. Oh, good observation. We should mention Chairman Blunt. This is his second opportunity to be chair of the Joint Inaugural Committee on inaugural ceremonies. And the last person to do that was Senator Wendell Ford from Kentucky.
All right. Yeah, the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, we all call it JSIC for short because acronyms are a big part of life here on Capitol Hill. And they are the official hosts of today's 59th inaugural ceremonies. Official host JSIC, and you're watching our live stream feed. We've got a view of the west front there, looking right at it from the center. You can see the platform there. That draped doorway at the center is what we call the lower west terrace door on the west front of the Capitol. It's where we're going to be seeing people coming out later and taking their seats on the platform.
Now, to the right-hand side, as you're looking at this camera feed, to the right-hand side, the majority of the people towards the right and higher up would be the media. The sun has obviously an impact upon photography, so that's where they're placed.
Oh yeah. On either side of this, sort of just out of view, there's another side. So you can see the bleachers type things that the spectators would sit on, but just out of view are the press scaffolds that they sit on. And you're right, the photographers are all over on the one side because the sun can ruin the camera angles if they're not.
Let's listen to our Marine band.
President. As you can see, folks, Vice President-elect Kamala Harris arriving there in the purple, arriving on the east front of the Capitol.
They are greeted by the Senate Sergeant of Arms, Jennifer Hemingway, and the acting House Sergeant of Arms, Tim Blodgett.
And there is President-elect Biden there, just out of the car, moving toward Vice President-elect Harris. Got great weather for this, of course. There's Dr. Jill Biden there in, I would call that a teal.
Teal?
Teal or turquoise?
Who am I to?
Teal and turquoise?
Question.
Turquoise with teal trim.
Oh, there's, you can see Officer Eugene Goodman close by as well. The
United States Capitol Police Officer Eugene Goodman, today's acting Deputy Sergeant at Arms.
He's in the brown overcoat, yes.
In the brown coat and scarf there. So folks, you may have seen United States Capitol Police Officer Eugene Goodman. You might have seen some footage of him, so he has the special honor today of being the Deputy Sergeant at Arms.
I see the chair of JASIC, Senator Roy Blunt, close by.
Yeah, so some of JASIC meets them here at the bottom of the East Front steps, and then I think they meet some of the others as they walk a little bit further up the steps there.
Again, this is not an unfamiliar scene.
Senator Klobuchar, I believe, there in the
Sure is.
brownish coat, tan coat. And here we go, starting the walk up the stairs, the East Front stairs. Now remember, folks, presidents used to be inaugurated right here on these East Front steps. Presidents were inaugurated here, basically starting with Andrew Jackson.
I think President Reagan got it right. The West Front is so much better, but it's historic to be on the side.
The move to the West Front in 1981 is one of those things where people think it's always been that way. Just like the Supreme Court getting their own building in 1935, we think it's always been that way. Here we go, going up the East Front steps. You can see some United States Capitol Police officers flanking there. And approaching the east door. Beautiful carved bronze doors.
Tourists used to enter through here. The Speaker's office used to be in the lobby out to the left.
Yeah, this door is not used a lot, folks. I have to say, you know, Ron and I and our colleagues in the visitor services and guide service, we are in the Capitol just about every day, and we don't see these doors open a whole lot.
Another name for them are the Randolph Rogers doors. Cast in Munich by the Royal Bavarian Foundry. 10,000 pounds. And the panels tell the life of George Washington. Well, his history.
Little scenes, yeah.
And Columbus.
Scenes of them. Columbus and Washington, they go up the sides. Also, we got a view of the inside here. Folks coming into that east door.
Excellent footage.
There's President-elect Biden and Dr. Jill Biden. You can see we got a nice sunny day. There's Vice President-elect Harris and Doug Emhoff.
Now, friends, I know what you're thinking.
And the JSIC behind them, Senator Blunt.
Where are they going? To a whole area.
And there's Speaker Pelosi coming through again. The color of the day, I think turquoise.
Please.
And Senator Mitch McConnell. And here we are looking at the Marine Band again. Like I said, they are going to be playing all day. And a little close-up of those uniforms, or a little bit of detail about those uniforms. As you know, they have the epaulettes, you know, the braiding on the shoulders. But Ron, trivia question for you. Do you know what the braids in the front are? They sort of hang down. They almost look like a bolo tie, sort of.
I don't, and I should.
They're called aiglets. Aiglets. And you can see the ones on the officers are gold. And then the other folks in the band there, Marine Band, they have white epaulettes and aiglets. So they're sort of hang down in the front, little sort of tassely looking things.
Oh, look at the passion of the director. Let's listen together.
Раз, 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 два, три, четыре, пять, шесть, семь, восемь, девять, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Спасибо.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is typical of inaugurations on the West Front. What are we doing? Waiting patiently.
I think that may be Representative DeLorio there. Her green footwear just at the top of camera now, but she's usually got some distinctive hair color and clothes that we can spot her even with masks on. It's difficult sometimes to identify our members of Congress when everybody is masked up in this pandemic.
Now, Jen, people have watched for a couple hours now, and they might be wondering, well, wait a minute, I see marble that's different colors. You would be correct.
Oh, yeah.
That marble from Vermont, Maryland, and Massachusetts, specifically Lee, Massachusetts.
Yeah, and on the inside of the building we see a lot of sandstone and a little bit of concrete. These are concrete walls here inside what we sort of lovingly refer to during inaugurations as the chute, right? This is where people are going to be sort of slaloming out. If you will. The chute brings to mind kind of like a water park, right? But they're going to kind of come down from the rotunda and out those doors onto the platform on the west side. So the door just behind us in this shot.
This chute is at the bottom of the staircase, which connects to the crypt.
Ladies and gentlemen, please direct your attention toward the inaugural platform. The Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark A. Milley.
General Milley coming out now, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
Now again, on previous inaugurations, you would just see tens of thousands of people. Now see, this is still quite a moment.
Yeah, this platform normally packed elbow to elbow. Folks in there, just like the early House and Senate chambers, actually. You know, National Statuary Hall members were crammed in there elbow to elbow until they expanded into the new House chamber in the 1860s.
I want our public, I want our audience to, maybe not now, but this afternoon, this evening, YouTube or Google inaugurations in the past. You will see people sprawled, not on the west side, but the east front, everywhere, hanging from the dome in places they shouldn't be. This is a most appropriate sight.
Yes, famous photograph of Lincoln inaugural. It's just crammed with spectators. That is Steve Scalise there on the right, I believe.
It would be from Louisiana. He would be the minority whip.
Our Marine band playing. They've got, like I said, they've got a full day. They've got a full concert. It's one tune after another there. We're going to be hearing from them some familiar tunes and some special selections. Marine band, they've also got what's called the blood stripe, I believe, down the side of the trouser leg, which is unique to their uniform. Okay, we're back to the chute. Ron's leaning in close to identify who we're seeing on screen here. Being shown their marks, how to come out. I think that might be Clyburn in the red hat.
From South Carolina, it is.
And everybody's got to know before they come out where they're going to on the platform. There's the assigned seating. There's little signs on the chairs. We saw a little bit of that earlier.
Leadership of the United States House of Representatives, Republican Whip, the Honorable Stephen Scalise, and Majority Whip, the Honorable James E. Clyburn.
So for our younger students, when you hear the word whip, that's the person that assembles the votes. That person makes calls and addresses before a bill gets to the floor, so they have a good idea whether it's going to go through or not.
The term comes to us, I think, from hunting. It refers to the whipper in, sort of rounds up and make sure all the hunting animals are pursuing in the right direction. So it's a good metaphor for our whips in Congress to sort of round up everybody to vote. Got some more folks coming down from the crypt here.
From the state of Vermont. I saw Senator Thune in front.
Those columns that you see, the crypt of the Capitol, just underneath the dome.
Janet, the act of secession is important, and this is going on with such good precision. As it always has.
We've heard it now a couple of times from members of the JASIC, an event commonplace and miraculous, this peaceful transfer of power. And the fact that it's all orchestrated, coming off together. There's Senator Graham.
Lindsey Graham. I see Senator Dick Durbin, who I ran past by in the cleaners last week. It looked like Senator Cory Booker was in front of them as well.
Well, they're squinting at us and we're squinting at them.
Senator Bernie Sanders.
Probably folks recognize Bernie Sanders. Senator from Vermont. Well dressed for potential bad weather.
Oh, he could be in a short sleeve shirt, but he's used to this.
Really comfortable weather for today's inaugural compared to some years past.
Such as President George W. Bush, I can recall walking down the street, sliding on Constitution Avenue, just trying to get a glimpse. It was
1829, Andrew Jackson's inauguration. The weather was so bad they had to do it inside the House chamber. This tradition that we're observing today, of course, this tradition is older, far older than you, I, or anybody else who's watching today. But this tradition has also evolved over time. It's changed, and things have changed about it. And so today's inaugural looks different than previous years.
Ladies and gentlemen,
there have been a lot of differences.
Leadership of the United States Senate, President Pro Tempore Emeritus, the Honorable Patrick Leahy and Mrs. Marshall Leahy. Democratic Whip, the Honorable Dick Durbin and Mrs. Rima Doden. Majority Whip, the Honorable John Thune and Mrs. Kimberly Thune. Democratic Leader, the Honorable Charles Schumer and Mrs. Irish Wineshaw Schumer. And President Pro Tempore of the Senate, the Honorable Chuck Grassley and Mrs. Jennifer Hines.
Senator Patrick Leahy has time for everyone. We see him on tour everywhere. His office is close by the rotunda. He'll greet everyone. He can give the tour. It's just amazing.
He has been a special guest on many of my tours.
Ladies and gentlemen, the members are so engaging with people. The late Congressman John Lewis, I can recall years ago, I waved him over. He says, "I'm going to vote and come back." And I said in my mind, no way. It took 15 minutes, but he came back and spoke to those young people. Well, Mr. Vice President Pence, he used to stand up, when he was a member of Congress, he used to stand up on the benches in the rotunda and give tours. I recall that all the time. It looks like Kevin McCarthy from California.
I believe we'll be seeing the beginning of the JASIC leaders going out to the platform here. That might be Senator Schumer we're seeing from the back again there.
Who once was a chair of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies. You have to notice this. The wind has slightly picked up.
Wind picking up a little bit. Yeah, it looks that way.
I love this. The Constitution brings us here. It's really one sentence that is necessary. The oath. 37 words or 30.
You know, it originally said, "I do solemnly swear or affirm I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States." And James Madison and George Mason insisted the chief executive should also swear an oath to the Constitution. And so Congress approved that version. So they added a little bit to that oath of office.
That's what brings us here, the Constitution. And this date is because of the 20th Amendment. This was mentioned in the video earlier. Senator George Norris from the state of Nebraska proposed this in 1925.
Yeah, again, in terms of those things, we think of them as always happening this way. We think inaugurations always in January, but until quite recently, they were happening at other times, including March. We saw earlier in response to our trivia question that George Washington was actually inaugurated April 30th, but a lot of the other ones, March 3rd or March 4th.
Or in some cases, if it's on a Sunday, March 5th.
Yes, and if inauguration falls on a Sunday, that's right, they do not have it on the Sunday. They do kind of a small swearing in and then the official ceremony the next day. Actually,
President Wilson, I believe, was inaugurated on a Sunday. That happened once. It looks like Senator Mendez from New Jersey there. Forgive us if we're hesitating. It's difficult to see sometimes with masks.
Also, the Capitol has been closed to tours out of an abundance of caution, of course, for some months now. And so, although these 535 members of Congress, senators are bosses, I would say, we haven't seen them in a little while.
You know, it's fun, Janet. I've seen times where former members of Congress, they've just casually walked up towards the West Front, and they know they don't have a seat, but you know, they kind of blend in. That's kind of fun.
Ladies and gentlemen,
I think we saw some former members arrive earlier.
Dan Quayle.
Here's former Vice President Dan Quayle, the Honorable Dan Quayle, about to step through the chute and out the door. And again, we've got camera angles here that, folks, that not a lot of other people do. Although there is a little zone set aside, so if anybody, there's a little moment off camera where they can straighten a tie or just do a quick check every hair is in place. Of course, with the wind on the platform, there's only so much you can do, but at least when you step out.
Not the handshake, but the...
Yeah, we're seeing fist bumps here. Former VP Dan Quayle heading out there. We thought, I guess that Mrs. Quayle, Marilyn Tucker Quayle, I believe, was going to be accompanying him, but looks like he is out there by himself today. A lot of things different this year. This scene doesn't always look like this.
No.
With so few chairs, people have to get up and move around, and they are able to move around. So I think we're seeing a little bit more socializing and photo taking. And of course, as we mentioned, not handshakes, but handshake equivalents. Safe handshake equivalents.
To be clear, we miss the people.
Of
no
course.
Question. We miss the people. They belong here, and just the sheer...
Well, this is the people's house, you know, and we were talking earlier, you and I, as tour guides, recalling how many times members of Congress appear during our tours. We'll be taking a group of public around through the rotunda or through the crypt or National Statuary Hall, which is the former House chamber. And, you know, there is no separate space, right? If a member needs to get from one side of the building to the other, they go right through those spaces. And very often, it's fun to point out. People will recognize their own member from their district. They may be visiting us from far, far away, and they'll recognize the member from their district passing through.
Looks like Senator Debbie Stabenow from Michigan. You know, you mentioned about the People's House. Inaugurations take place here, not the Supreme Court.
Yeah,
not
that's
the
a
White
really
House.
good point. Where inaugurations don't happen.
Right. They make the laws that protect us here. Elected officials here. Accountability, Congress. It's important.
Well, and this is a ceremony that's happening publicly, in full view, right?
Look at that entrance to the crypt. That was an excellent shot.
So in the crypt of the Capitol, you can see these, they're sandstone columns, they're Doric columns. They're among some of the oldest architectural features in the building. And they were originally all supposed to be painted white, and so you'll see a little bit of variation in the natural stone there.
Now that star in the center is called the Compass Stone. Here comes Senator Clinton and former President William Jefferson Clinton.
They just stepped through the crypt of the Capitol, heading out now down into the chute, and we'll be seeing them on the platform really soon. back on the platform here, you can see to the left the podium where the action's going to go down. And again, this is constructed. This is all kind of built onto the side of the Capitol. There's actually a section of railing,
Yes.
which is removable. It's a massive stone balustrade. It looks like you couldn't lift it for anything, but every 4 years it's lifted out so that there's a pathway for folks to get out onto the west front here.
We should also mention the mace is brought out here. That's the symbol of power and authority. You can make the argument that is the oldest relic in the Capitol, and it's brought out under the direction of the House Sergeant of Arms. Well, it is a joint meeting, joint session after all.
So many traditions, and we have more of those wonderful videos to show you all later on, highlighting some of these traditions that take place. This is an inside view. This is another angle I don't think anybody else's cameras have.
No, that was coming from the law library door.
Coming up from the law library door.
Yeah, that was renamed the law library in 1860.
And into the crypt.
Yes, the Supreme Court used to be in that area. They moved upstairs because the Senate moved into its new chamber. It's all about space.
We've seen some exterior
Ladies
views
and
of cars
gentlemen,
pulling
the
up.
42nd President of the United States, the Honorable William J. Clinton, and the
being
Honorable
announced.
Hillary Rodham Clinton.
Yes, every president that is in attendance and First Lady is announced.
And that's the Bushes coming through the crypt now. And down the other side of the crypt into the chute. They'll be on the platform soon too with the Clintons.
You know, normally we would hear the roar of the crowd for every one announced, and it is noticeably different.
I mean, I've always staggers me to imagine how Reagan's second inaugural in '85, how they had to move it into the rotunda and try to
7
stage
degrees.
this massive event inside. Because you mentioned earlier James Monroe's inauguration outside. The first one to be held outdoors, and the number of people attending just, you know, astronomically more. All right, we've got the Obamas coming through, about to enter into the crypt there.
Quite a presence that couple brings. I'm looking for his coat tomorrow.
Now that you've mentioned to me you've never seen him in a hat, I keep looking for hats.
He's been in a hat. It's just rare when he's in the Capitol building.
And all these folks we're seeing, this is their home.
Oh, very.
They have memories here going back years, familiar faces around.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 43rd President of the United States, the Honorable George W. Bush and Mrs. Laura Bush.
The Bushes coming out of the chute and onto the platform. Oh, we got a scarf slip there. You're right, that wind is picking up.
The Bush legacy, formidable. There is a tree planted to President Bush on the House side of the Capitol, and the member's name is eluding me, Lamar Smith, who had it planted. Yes, I pass by it quite frequently.
You know, inaugurations almost like track the history of technology in this nation. You know, think about the early ones, there's no radio, no television, there's no amplification. A lot of people, I think, complained that they couldn't hear George Washington giving his speech. The first one to have amplification, 1921, Warren G. Harding. Oh, we have got the justices arriving
Executive
here.
branch.
You mean the judicial branch?
Excuse me, judicial branch, excuse me.
There's the herald trumpets.
You mentioned inaugurations. How about President Lincoln? People were within 10 feet from him.
Oh, yeah.
Soldiers with weapons.
Those are called tabards, those things that hang on their trumpets there. They have two sets. They have a navy blue and a white. So those are the navy blue that we see there on the herald trumpets. U.S. Army herald trumpets. So our justices in their robes coming down. It's my understanding that they gather in the
Ladies
old court
and
chamber.
gentlemen, the 44th
the robes
President
on
of
and
the
kinda come all
United
out
States,
together.
the Honorable Barack H. Obama and Mrs. Michelle Obama.
Noticeable applause.
I hear the applause there. Very helpful to have announcers.
As a senator, I once shared the same elevator with him.
You know,
Is
I
it
got
after you?
here, I actually moved to Washington on Election Day, 2008. Came here to work at the Capitol just about a week later. And then, so my first big public event was actually President Obama's first inaugural, 2009. And my job for the day was actually to escort people to their spots, to their seats.
Oh, nice.
As we mentioned this year, you know, different seating than in years past.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Chief Justice of the United States, the Honorable John G. Roberts Jr., and the Associate Justices of the Supreme Court.
Justice Sotomayor will be doing the swearing in later for VP-elect Harris.
Yes, careful, everyone.
Yeah, everyone needs to watch their step. There's carpeting there.
I know what people are thinking. Why can't they take an elevator? It's just not that simple.
Well, this is a historic building. It's
Well, just to get to that point, there's other areas. Justice Barrett, I see, just towards the end.
Elena Kagan there.
Yep, Justice Kavanaugh.
It would seem that they have stepped out in order, almost to the way that they're seated, right? Because they're seated in the chamber, Chief Justice in the middle, and then the other Associate Justices
Ladies and
fan out on
gentlemen,
either side
the
in
children
order
of
of
Vice
experience.
President-elect Harris and Mr. Douglas Imhoff, Cole Mackin Imhoff, and Ella Rose Imhoff.
You know, I was reading that we have a lot of stepmothers involved
Yes.
in the ceremony today. Dr. Joe Biden, stepmother to President-elect Biden's sons, and then, of course, Vice President-elect Harris, stepmother to these two individuals here.
This is likely as much as we'll see of the children as coverage of young people. It's out of respect to the family. So
Being shown to their seats. They are young, 21 and 26. And Vice President-elect Harris has been their stepmother for a few years now. I think they were maybe teens.
this seems so strange that there's so few people there. But
it looks very different than inaugurations past. But this tradition is so long that although this looks different than the last one and the one before that, it may not look that different than the ones at the very beginning. You know, we talked about 1801 and people saying they couldn't spot Jefferson because he wasn't wearing any special sash or hat or anything.
Coordination of spacing.
These are more family members here, I believe. These are the Biden's children here. So this is Biden family members.
I've toured President-elect Biden's brother.
You know, in addition to,
Years ago.
you know, I think folks, when they think about visiting the Capitol, they think about sending their young students here on field trips from all over the nation, or think about coming in and looking at the artworks with us. But we do give tours sometimes to important guests and
Yes,
dignitaries.
very fortunate.
Former President Clinton there, shown on the platform.
We're approaching the 11 o'clock hour, and in another hour, President Biden-elect, well, he'll be sworn in, and we'll hear his remarks in less than that time. So Yes, people have waited a long time, but the end is near.
All right, so the Biden children, grandchildren, about to step into the chute and out onto the platform. Robert Hunter Biden II, Ashley Blazer Biden, and the grandchildren of the president-elect there. So folks have passed through the crypt and sort of out and down the other side. Down here toward the west front, they're about to step through the draped door that we've been looking at from the outside of the platform, kind of just beneath those flags.
A question one might ask.
Ladies and gentlemen, the children of President-elect Biden, Robert Hunter Biden II and Ashley Blazer Biden, also the grandchildren of the president-elect.
Now, I just want to point out the Marine Band here is playing John Philip Sousa March, which is called Bo Ideal. As we see the Biden children and grandchildren headed out to the platform to take their seats.
This is the area of the Capitol Visitor Center.
Yeah, that's the area where the visitor center attaches to the old front of the Capitol. So if you look closely at the walls here, you can see sandstone from the 2000s attached to sandstone from the 1800s, and a little clear window in the floor. Coming through the crypt.
You know, with the approach of Vice President Pence, who's a pretty cool customer, if this isn't emotional, it will be when he leaves on the East Front. So it'll be interesting to see for him and his wife. Just their posture coming down, what the emotions might be. Has to be surreal.
Yes. And while all this is happening, the platform filling up with members, you know, the president-elect waiting somewhere inside the Capitol. If you can imagine folks being backstage before a big performance, the jitters, the butterflies, hoping you remember your lines, hoping you remember your marks, right, where you're supposed to stand. And then we have these cameras and spots watching folks come down the steps. Just behind those steps is actually the spot where they were meant to entomb George Washington, underneath the crypt of the Capitol. Vice President Pence here, about to step out from the chute. We see the Obamas on the platform. Soon there'll be an announcement for everybody to be seated, but not yet.
We do have a ways to go. We have the national anthem to be rendered.
Yes. We have performances to watch. We have poems to hear. This program has expanded and contracted over the years, you know, according to the priorities of the day and according to the traditions, according to the conditions of the day. When they've had to cut things short for one reason or another, they've probably, you know, left some things out, and other times people have thought, well, I've got this moment and I'm gonna hear my favorite poet and I'm gonna hear my favorite musician.
Ladies and gentlemen, accompanying the Vice President, the Secretary of the Senate, the Honorable Julie E. Adams, and Chief Administrative Officer of the House of Representatives, Catherine Spindor.
So we got the Secretary of the Senate, Chief Administrative Officer of the Senate there, accompanying Vice President Pence.
Ms. Adams was on the left-hand side.
And Karen Pence, his wife. Here with Vice President Pence, getting ready to come out of the chute.
The Pences have visited my church. Yes.
Vice President Pence is I think probably the member of Congress, Senate, that visitors have spotted the most on my tours in the past couple of years.
He has time for people, doesn't he?
He stops and shakes hands. I had whole school groups of 8th graders run over to meet the vice president. And again, it's one of those moments folks can't believe they're having. Came on a tour of the Capitol and saw the vice president. Oh, there they are, those tabards on the herald trumpets.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Vice President of the United States, the Honorable Michael R. Pence and Mrs. Karen Pence.
Quite a warm reception.
Marine Man playing Hail Columbia. Oh, I'm sorry, I think this is another Sousa March. As the Pences step out onto the platform, headed to their seats.
Oh, riders for the flag, yes.
Justices there in the same shot with Vice President Pence.
Familiar tune? You can hear the audience singing "This Is My Country." You can hear them.
I was reading about the Marine Band uniforms, and they have slightly different uniform for the orchestra because those epaulets on the shoulder make it very hard for them to hold the violins and such. So it's an incredible thing to think about uniform design having to conform to what musicians need to play their instruments. Vice President Pence there, we see there's Dan Quayle and George W. Bush there, exchanging a greeting on the platform. Former presidents and former vice presidents and justices, you can see them all there. And families. Harris family that we see here.
Did you notice those 2 strollers earlier out on the east front? I think.
I didn't see the
yes,
strollers.
Yes, 2 strollers.
Sure.
On the east front. I think we know who's in those strollers now.
I think we do. Got some small ones there. I think maybe the only equivalent in most of our lives maybe is attending like a graduation ceremony for a family member, perhaps. And
graduation, commencement, I would agree.
Yeah, the idea of everyone, the time it takes for everyone to find their seats, and then for all the names to be announced, and then for everybody to depart. And you've got to dress for the duration, right?
Yes. We should mention to people there is a plan B if we don't have it on the west front outside, and a plan C. But
seating down here on the west front lawn, so members of Congress, some former members, other guests.
Some of our colleagues are working in that area.
Those mayors and governors that we saw earlier arriving, the diplomatic corps, all these folks have found seats. And of course, everything spread out due to the pandemic. You can see President-elect Biden there at the top corner of our screen. Lots of photos being taken. Some family members. I believe those are the Biden granddaughters there, the 3 ladies in sort of pastel color coats. There is a very interesting fashion strategy for the day. Folks seem to pick bright colors so they can be spotted among the sea of dark overcoats on the platform. But again, it's a little more spread out than normal, so it's a bit easier to pick out individuals. here.
You know, one thing we've noticed, no one has, gone back into the entrance.
Coming out the west door.
Yes, once you're
Nobody's
out.
gone back in the west
Once you're
door.
out, I think that's it. Oh. Coming down the east staircase.
And Albert Bierstadt painting there on
Yes.
the staircase there is VP-elect
That
Harris.
painting that people just saw used to be in the House of Representatives chamber.
And they're preparing to walk across the crypt. So that escalator you can spot at the back of the shot, that's leading down into the Capitol Visitor Center, the newest part of the Capitol complex, opened up in 2008.
December 2nd. I remember that one. Officer Goodman.
In the light brown coat.
Well, that's going to be quite a moment. Quite a moment.
Kamala Harris and Doug Emhoff here preparing to cross the crypt. Here they go. You see those sandstone columns in the crypt. So again, in the pale light brown coat there, United States Capitol Police Officer Eugene Goodman. Deputy Sergeant at Arms.
Yes, for this ceremony.
Acting Deputy Senate Sergeant at Arms.
Excuse me.
Eugene O. Goodman, Private First Class, United States Capitol Police.
Very soft-spoken gentleman. Says 4 words a week. Just
He's a familiar face to
Yes.
us and to our colleagues in the guide service. And he's a face that you all may have seen recently in some photographs and video of the Capitol. We can hear the footsteps of VP-elect Harris coming down the stairs from the crypt. Officer Goodman, this is a walk he's made many a time, but never as part of the procession in quite this way.
don't you feel like he's on duty. It's just
You can see his eyes sort of going back and forth. Now, of course, he's seeing familiar faces all around him, but
Ladies and gentlemen, accompanying the Vice President-elect, the Chief of Inaugural Ceremonies, Maria Miller-Lohmeyer, the Acting Deputy House Sergeant-at-Arms, Kevin Grubbs, and the Acting Deputy Senate Sergeant-at-Arms, United States Capitol Police Officer, Private First Class Eugene O. Goodman.
well, crescendo of applause, and we know who that's for.
yeah.
Officer Goodman. His actions more than heroic.
Oh, there we see Speaker Pelosi. And it looks like the rest of the JSIC there preparing to cross. So
Mr. Warrior in the red scarf.
we've got to spell out our acronyms. It's the Joint Congressional Committee on
Ladies and
Inaugural
gentlemen,
Ceremonies.
the Vice President-elect of the United States, Kamala Devi Harris, and Mr. Douglas Emhoff.
Vice President-elect Harris, who resigned her seat as a senator from California just yesterday. And today, very shortly, to be sworn in as Vice President.
So her office within the Capitol will move
Yes.
from her senator's office to the vice president's office.
You know, it's really
Senate
Richard
side of the
Nixon that
Capitol.
really transferred the location of the vice presidency, working towards the old executive office building.
And putting the locus of the vice president's office here at the Capitol. Because, of course, they are the tie-breaking vote in the Senate. All right, so on our camera there on the right, we can see Representative Hoyer in the red scarf, member of the Joint Committee, the JSIC, Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies. VP-elect Harris hugging her children there.
Oh, that's a moment there. Vice President.
VP
Vice
meeting
President.
VP.
Yes, Harris-elect. Vice President-elect Harris, yes.
And notice the real furniture, folks. There's folding chairs out there, but that's a real chair and a real table. And on that table, I believe, are some of the sacred texts that are going to be used today. Representative Clyburn there having a moment with VP-elect Harris.
Do I see snow?
I see snow flurries, it looks like, in this shot of Chuck Schumer.
Those are snow flurries. You notice it has gotten considerably darker since.
The wind did pick up.
Well, soon to be the 46th president.
Joe
Joseph
Biden, Dr. Joe Biden,
making their way.
getting ready to cross through the crypt.
We'll wave to the camera, yes.
I can't stress enough that we have cameras in areas that you won't see on any other live stream or broadcast. These behind-the-scenes shots, this idea
The
that you can
Joint
see into the
Congressional
visitor
Committee
center.
on Inaugural Ceremonies, Staff Representative Alexandria Gordican DeChico, accompanying the House Republican leader, the Honorable Kevin McCarthy. Staff Representative Bridget Brennan, accompanying House Majority Leader, the Honorable Steny Hoyer and Mrs. Yvette Lewis. Staff Representative Kate Knudsen, accompanying Speaker of the House of Representatives, the Honorable Nancy Pelosi and Mr. Paul Pelosi. Staff Representative Lindsey Kerr, accompanying the Honorable Amy Klobuchar and Mr. John Bessler. Staff Representative Stephanie Hager Mucko, accompanying Senate Majority Leader, the Honorable Mitch McConnell and the Honorable Elaine L. Chao. And Staff Representative Rochelle Graves Schroeder, accompanying the Chairman of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, the Honorable Roy Blunt and Mrs. Abigail Blunt.
So those members of the JCEC, the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, the official host of today's 59th inaugural ceremonies, we can see them there headed out onto the platform. The announcer just said the names.
Proud moment for the committee.
They've put all this together.
Not just September, well before that, the planning has gone on. And let's be honest, this has been a different inauguration and hopefully something that we won't see again for a lot of different reasons. And they've really pulled this off handsomely. There goes Senator Blunt, the former Majority Whip of the House. He's been through a few of these ceremonies. Again, this is the second time he has chaired this committee.
Yes.
There's been 5 people to chair the committee twice, and Senator Blunt would be the latest.
He spoke of this ceremony today being an assurance for all people, our continued and unbroken commitment, continuity, stability, perseverance, democracy. As we get ready to see the peaceful transfer of power, an event both commonplace and miraculous. President-elect Biden here and Dr. Jill Biden just passing through the crypt of the Capitol, soon to emerge onto the platform. We can see the back of the Obamas here on the platform. Cole and Ella, and it's snowing. Cole and Ella, VP Harris's children there, Ella is the young lady you see with the plaid coat with kind of an embellishment on the shoulders.
Ladies and gentlemen, accompanying the President-elect, the Staff Director of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, Fitzhugh Elder IV, the Acting House Senate Sergeant-at-Arms, Tim Blodgett, and the Acting Senate Sergeant-at-Arms, Jennifer Hemingway.
You know, snow, not unheard of in Washington in January. But you know what? When they used to have these in March, snow was also not unheard of.
Not at all.
Until 1933, inaugurations happened in March, and pretty risky in the era before paved roads.
Well, our last inauguration, we had a little bit of rain. President Trump on our last inauguration. Of course, President Obama. I think it was about 25 degrees.
The weather's always an element.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President-elect of the United States, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., and Dr. Jill Biden.
This piece by the Marine Band Trio from Hail America. A Marine band known as the President's Own. They play at the pleasure of the President and the Commandant of the Marine Corps. And they've played at every inauguration since Jefferson's. Biden's approaching their seats on the platform here. Greeting former VP Dan Quayle.
Look at his eyes.
The pride.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated.
That's a phrase that is well welcomed right now. Let's enjoy the ceremony.
Please welcome the Honorable Amy Klobuchar.
Vice President Pence, Mr. President-elect, Madam Vice President-elect, members of Congress and the judicial branch, former presidents and first ladies, vice presidents, leaders from abroad, and a whole bunch of Bidens. America, welcome to the 59th presidential inauguration, where in just a few moments, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will take their solemn oaths. This ceremony is the culmination of 244 years of a democracy. It is the moment when leaders brought to this stage by the will of the people promise to be faithful to our Constitution, to cherish it and defend it. It is the moment when they become, as we all should be, guardians of our country. Have we become too jaded, too accustomed to the ritual of the passing of the torch of democracy to truly appreciate what a blessing and a privilege it is to witness this moment? I think not. 2 weeks ago, when an angry, violent mob staged an insurrection and desecrated this temple of our democracy, it awakened us to our responsibilities as Americans. This is the day when our democracy picks itself up, brushes off the dust, and does what America always does: goes forward as a nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This conveyance of a sacred trust between our leaders and our people takes place in front of this shining Capitol dome for a reason.
Когда Авраам Линкольн выступал впервые с речью перед этим Капитолием, он обещал, что он достроит здание нашей демократии. И своим критикам он отвечал: если люди видят, что власть в Капитолии продолжается, это значит, что и наше единство продолжится, и оно продолжится. Поколениями американцы отдавали свои жизни на то, чтобы наша республика сохранилась. Это обеспечило нам экономическое процветание. И теперь это задача всех нас, а не только тех двух лидеров, которые вступают сегодня на эту дорогу, когда мы передаем этот факел демократии. Мы сегодня обещаем никогда не принимать нашу демократию за нечто данное. Мы празднуем сегодня нашу устойчивость. Мы превозносим сегодня обычных людей, которые являются основой нашей демократии, которые, несмотря на эту пандемию, действуют. И мы превозносим сегодня новое поколение людей. Мы превозносим сегодня нового президента Байдена, который объединит нашу страну. И мы превозносим нашего первого вице-президента, которая объединила в себе, которая стала первой женщиной-вице-президентом, и многих других людей, которые приближали сегодняшний день. Они действительно показали нам, что все возможно. Это действительно чудо. Наша демократия, наша страна. И сегодня на ступеньках Капитолия и перед этим чудесным полем флагов мы посвящаем себя делу демократии. Спасибо. Для меня большая честь представим вам сенатора, который работал со мной и многими другими для того, чтобы организовать сегодняшнюю церемонию. Пожалуйста, сенатор Рой Блант.
Well, I should have known when Senator Klobuchar got involved, at least there'd be a touch of snow up here this morning.
Сегодня у нас с утра пошел снег. Мне кажется, что снег не был включен в наш план. Спасибо большое сенатору Клобушар и другим членам Объединенного комитета Конгресса. Наша церемония инаугурации официально началась. Также я бы хотел поблагодарить наших партнеров, особенно с точки зрения безопасности, потому что, учитывая сегодняшние обстоятельства, на инаугурации 4 года назад можно было бы описать церемонию как обычную и чудесную, потому что прошло 75 лет с момента войны, еще больше лет с момента депрессии, а теперь мы преодолеваем пандемию. Все 3 ветви нашего государства объединились в определении демократии для того, чтобы еще больше усовершенствовать свой союз. И сегодняшняя церемония инаугурации подтверждает это, веруя в том, что США может достичь своих целей только если мы будем работать над совершенствованием себя. В Конституции обозначено, что демократия определяется несколькими словами, что народ — это источник демократии. И только Конституция говорит о том, что государство существует благодаря тому, что люди являются причиной его существования. И эти слова должны служить основой для формирования более совершенного союза.
They did not claim that in our new country nothing would need to be improved.
И, к счастью, люди поняли, что сотрудничество всегда будет во главе великой демократии. Свободы, которыми мы сегодня обладаем, та нация, которую мы сегодня обладаем, это все не просто так. Но великая демократия, которая была наполнена успехами и неудачами, это результат нашей великой борьбы. Нападение на Капитолий, которое случилось 2 недели назад, напоминает нам о том, что государство должно пользоваться системой сдержек и противовесов и быть устойчивым перед такими ударами. В ходе тех угроз, в ходе пандемии мы продемонстрировали решимость и жертвенность, и, конечно, мы не должны на этом останавливаться. Перед нами стоят другие угрозы, и наши работники здравоохранения, кто находится на переднем крае этой борьбы, и многие другие люди, от которых мы зависим, также вносят свой вклад в нашу общую борьбу. И мы подошли к сегодняшнему моменту, когда все люди по всему миру смотрят, наблюдают за тем, что мы делаем. Наше правительство объединяется, Конгресс и судьи присоединяются к передаче полномочий. Одна политическая партия сегодня более довольна, чем когда-либо, но это не момент разделения, это момент объединения. Новая администрация начинает свою работу, и это новое начало. И вместе с тем наши общие национальные дебаты продолжаются в определении демократии. Это является очень важным для совершенствования нашего союза, союза всех американцев. И для меня огромная привилегия здесь сегодня выступать перед вами. Спасибо. Я хотел бы пригласить сейчас для выступления преподобного Лео О'Донована, который давний друг семьи Байденов. Пожалуйста, встаньте для исполнения государственного гимна. Господь всемогущий и милосердный, в эти священные времена мы предстаем перед Тобой в нужде. И действительно, мы стоим перед Тобой на коленях. Но мы все же надеемся, и мы поднимаем к Тебе глаза в надежде, что Ты даруешь нам союз на нашей земле, союз всех наших граждан, для того, чтобы содействовать дальнейшему процветанию, дальнейшему достижению свобод наших граждан. Мы представляем многие расы, многие цвета кожи, мы происходим из разных семей, и мы гораздо многочисленны, чем в те времена, когда преподобный Кэрол выступал 220 лет на инаугурационной церемонии других президентов. Президент этих Соединенных Штатов должен действовать с мудростью и на благо своего народа. И сегодня мы признаемся в своих прошлых неудачах, которые привели к разделению, для того, чтобы даровать свободу всем. И сейчас мы хотим преодолеть вопросы, которые нас разделяют, для того, чтобы помочь особенно самым тем, кто пострадал больше всего из нас. В каждом из нас есть сила, Это то, что мы можем поддержать других, тех, кто нуждается в этом больше всего. И эта сила называется любовь. Эта сила заключается в том, чтобы отдавать себя другим. И сегодня это называется американским патриотизмом. Она рождена из заботы об общем благе, из милосердия ко всем. Мы просим Тебя даровать мудрость нашему новому президенту, с тем, чтобы он мог руководить нашей нацией и разделять благо и зло. Папа Франциск напомнил нам, как важно мечтать всем вместе. И он писал, что мечты строятся вместе. Мечты объединяют людей. Помоги нашему новому президенту объединить людей нашей земли во славу Твою во веки веков. Аминь.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the presentation of our national colors by the Armed Forces Color Guard.
Дамы и господа, просим вас не садиться, оставаться на своих местах. Дамы и господа, для исполнения государственного гимна в сопровождении оркестра, пожалуйста, встречайте Леди Гага.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome from the city of South Fulton, Georgia,
Дамы и господа,
President of the International Association of Firefighters, Local 3920, Fire Captain Andrea M. Hall, for the reciting of the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
я клянусь верности флагу Соединенных Штатов Америки
and to the republic for
и
which it stands,
республике, которую он представляет, единой нации, под Богом,
indivisible, with liberty
которая неотделима от свободы и справедливости для всех.
What you are all about to be part of America is a historic
Сегодня вы участвуете в историческом моменте. Сегодня вы будете свидетелями приведения к присяге первой женщины, вице-президента африкано-американского и азиатского происхождения Камалы Харрис. Ее приведет к присяге судья Джостис Саня Майот. Дамы и господа, пожалуйста, просим не садиться. Пожалуйста, поднимите свою правую руку и повторяйте после меня. Я, Камала Харрис, торжественно клянусь, торжественно клянусь, что буду добросовестно выполнять и защищать Конституцию Соединенных Штатов против всех врагов внешних и внутренних, что я буду полностью ей верна. Я свободно принимаю на себя эту обязанность и клянусь это соблюдать. Буду осуществлять обязанности поста, на который я вступаю. И да поможет мне Господь.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated.
Дамы и господа, пожалуйста, просим вас садиться. Мы приглашаем Дженнифер Лопес для исполнения песни в сопровождении военно-морского оркестра. Просто прекрасно. Солнышко светит, и наш избранный президент сегодня у нас была первая церемония инаугурации в истории, когда Джей Лопес была на разогреве у председателя Верховного суда Джона Робертса, который сейчас проведет церемонию приведения к присяге следующего президента Соединенных Штатов Джозефа Байдена. Дамы и господа, просим вас встать. Пожалуйста, поднимите свою правую руку и повторяйте за мной. Я, Джозеф Робинет Байден-младший, торжественно клянусь, что буду добросовестно выполнять обязанности президента Соединенных Штатов и в полную меру своих сил буду поддерживать, охранять и защищать Конституцию Соединенных Штатов. Да поможет вам Господь, да поможет мне Господь. Поздравляю вас, господин президент. Дамы и господа, пожалуйста, присаживайтесь. Дорогие американцы, тот момент, которого мы все так ждали, наконец пришел. Для меня большая честь быть первым человеком, который официально представит вам 46-го президента Америки Джозефа Робинета Байдена-младшего. уважаемый председатель Верховного Суда Робертс, вице-президент Харрис, спикер Пелоси, вице-президент Пенс, уважаемые гости и уважаемые американцы, это День Америки, это День демократии, День истории и День надежды на новое. Веками Америку испытывали, и Америка отвечала на все вызовы. И сегодня мы празднуем триумф не кандидата, но нашей цели, цели демократии, дела демократии. Воля народа была услышана. Мы снова узнали, что демократия драгоценна, демократия хрупка. И теперь демократия победила. Всего несколько дней назад мы видели, как насилие потрясло Капитолий, и мы все объединились под Богом. Мы стали неразделимы для того, чтобы осуществить эту мирную передачу власти, как это происходило на протяжении более чем 200 лет. И мы, американцы, как всегда, оптимистичны. Мы смогли оставить в стороне свои вопросы, которые нас разделяют. Я благодарю моих предшественников, президентов, которые присутствуют здесь сегодня от самого сердца. И я знаю, что наша Конституция прочна, и я знаю силу нашей нации, точно так же, как и президент Картер, который не смог сегодня присутствовать, но которого мы благодарим за его службу нашей Родине. Я только что принес присягу перед лицом присягу каждого патриота, начиная с Джорджа Вашингтона. Но американская история, она зависит не только от каждого из нас и от каких-то отдельных американцев, но от всех нас, от нас, народа, которые стремятся к построению более совершенного союза. Мы великая нация, мы хорошие люди, и на протяжении сотен лет борьбы в мире и войны мы прошли такой долгий путь, и перед нами еще лежит долгий путь. Но мы будем прогрессировать для того, чтобы достичь еще большего, вопреки всем угрозам, воспользовавшись всеми нашими возможностями. Мы должны еще многое построить и многое достичь. Всего перед несколькими людьми в нашей нации вставали такие огромные угрозы, которые мы видим перед нами сейчас. Вирус забрал столько много жизней за последний год, практически сколько Америка потеряла в ходе Второй мировой войны. Многие стали безработными, многие бизнесы обанкротились. Но 400-летняя история нас подвигает к тому, чтобы бороться дальше. Сама планета просит. Сейчас мы видим подъем радикализма, терроризма, и мы должны бороться с этим, и мы должны его победить. И для преодоления этих угроз, для восстановления, достижения безопасного будущего для Америки, это требует не просто слов, это требует объединения. В такой же январский день была подписана Декларация о независимости Америки.
It'll be for this act, and my whole soul is in it. My whole soul is in it. Today, on this January day, my
Сегодня,
whole soul
в
is in
этот
this.
январский день, вся моя душа в этом, в том, чтобы объединить Америку, объединить нашу нацию. И я прошу всех американцев присоединиться ко мне в этом деле. Объединиться перед нашими проблемами, бороться с беззаконием, с насилием, с болезнью, с безработицей. И, объединяясь, мы сможем достичь многих важных вещей. Мы сможем исправить наши ошибки. Мы сможем образовывать наших детей в безопасности, в школах, преодолеть насилие. И мы сможем вновь восстановить наш средний класс. Мы сможем достичь расовой справедливости. И мы снова сможем сделать Америку силой, ведущей мир к добру. Я знаю, что когда мы говорим об объединении, это может звучать как какая-то глупая фантазия. Я знаю, что силы, разделяющие нас, они очень сильны, они очень глубоки, но также они не новы. И наша история — это была постоянная борьба между идеей Америки, что мы все созданы равными, и ужасающей реальностью, наполненной расизмом. Эти проблемы нас долгое время разделяли. И это борьба постоянная, в которой победа не предопределена. Однако лучшее в нас всегда побеждало. И в каждый из этих моментов мы объединялись для того, чтобы идти вперед. И мы можем сделать это сейчас. История, вера, разум показывают нам путь объединения, путь единства. Мы должны воспринимать друг друга не как врагов, но как соседей. Мы должны относиться друг к другу с уважением и достоинством. Мы можем объединить свои силы для того, чтобы снизить накал страстей. Без единения нет мира, нет прогресса. И только изнуряющая вражда. Не государство, не нация, но хаос. И сейчас исторический момент, критический момент. И единение — это путь вперед. И мы должны встретить этот момент как объединенные, как Соединенные Штаты Америки. Я гарантирую вам, что мы не потерпим неудачи, что мы никогда не потерпим неудачи в Америке. Мы всегда действовали вместе. И сегодня, в этом месте, в этот момент, давайте все вместе, давайте начнем, давайте перевернем лист, давайте начнем слышать друг друга, выказывать друг другу уважение. Давайте уничтожим все прошлое, все наши разногласия. Они не должны становиться поводом к войне. Мы должны отринуть ту культуру, которая основана на манипуляции. Уважаемые сограждане, мы должны действовать по-другому. Америка должна быть лучше, чем это. И я считаю, что Америка гораздо лучше. Просто посмотрите вокруг. Мы находимся в тени купола Капитолия, который видел в тот момент, который видел еще гражданскую войну. И тогда мы смогли победить. И вот мы сейчас здесь, в месте, где Кинг говорил про свою мечту. И на другой инаугурации были протесты, а сегодня прошлая инаугурация сопровождалась протестами женщин, а на сегодняшней инаугурации мы празднуем вступление в должность первой женщины-вице-президента. На кладбище, которое примыкает к Капитолию, покоятся многие герои, которые положили свою жизнь на благо Америки. И на этом священном месте толпа вторгнулась в Капитолий для того, чтобы вывести нас с этого священного места. Этого не случилось, этого никогда не случилось. Ни сегодня, ни завтра, никогда. Никогда.
To all those who supported our campaign, I'm humbled by the faith you've placed in us.
Для меня большая честь то доверие, которое вы вложили в меня. Если вы не согласны со мной, с моими идеями, хорошо, потому что именно в этом заключается идея демократии и идея Америки. И, возможно, в этом самая большая сила Америки. Послушайте меня. Разногласия не должны вести к разъединению нации. И я вам это обещаю. Я буду президентом для всех американцев, для всех. Я обещаю вам, я буду бороться и за тех, кто не поддерживал меня, так же упорно, как и за тех, кто меня поддержал. Сотни лет назад были написаны общие цели, которые объединяют американцев, и мы их все знаем. Это возможность и безопасность, уважение, честь людей и правда, истина. И последние месяцы научили нас горькой правде, что ложь очень часто используется для достижения власти. И руководители, которые обещали защищать нашу Конституцию, защищать наших граждан, защищать Конституцию и бороться с ложью, не выполнили этого обещания. Я понимаю, что многие из сограждан смотрят в будущее со страхом. Я понимаю, что они беспокоятся насчет своих рабочих мест. Они, как и мой отец в свое время, беспокоятся о том, смогут ли они позаботиться о своей семье, выплатить ипотеку, получить медицинскую страховку. Я обещаю вам, я это понимаю. Но из-за этого не стоит выступать против тех, кто не похож на вас. Мы должны прекратить эту нецивилизованную войну, которая ведется сейчас между консерваторами и либералами, между городскими жителями и сельскими жителями. Мы должны это преодолеть и открыть свое сердце. Если мы продемонстрируем немножко больше смирения, немножко больше понимания, толерантности, то мы сможем это преодолеть. Как говорила моя мама, просто на секундочку представь себя на месте другого человека. Потому что смысл в жизни вот в чем. Ты не знаешь, как повернется своя судьба. Иногда, в какой-то момент, когда тебе понадобится помощь, когда вы попросите о помощи, вы получите эту помощь. Именно так, это именно то, что делает нашу страну более процветающей, более готовой к будущему. И, конечно, мы в чем-то можем не соглашаться. Уважаемые сограждане, перед нами стоит большая задача, большая работа. Выйти из этих темных времен. И, возможно, мы должны выступить в борьбу, с пандемией все вместе, объединенные. И как говорится в Библии, возможно, ночь — это темное время, но с рассветом появится свет, и мы должны в этом всем действовать вместе. Мои коллеги из Сената, мы все понимаем, что мир следит за нами сегодня. И вот что я хочу сказать миру. Америку испытывали, и мы вышли из этого испытания еще сильнее. Мы восстановим свои партнерства и снова будем взаимодействовать с миром. Не для того, чтобы бороться со вчерашними угрозами, но чтобы бороться с угрозами сегодняшними. И мы будем лидерами не только в качестве примера, но мы будем оказывать влияние своим примером на весь мир. Мы будем сильным партнером по сохранению мира и безопасности мира. Мы так много прошли, как страна. И своей первой просьбой в качестве президента я бы хотел попросить вас почтить минутой молчания всех тех, кого мы потеряли, сотни тысяч жизней наших друзей, коллег, матерей, сыновей, всех. Поэтому я прошу вас, давайте молча помолимся за всех тех, кто потерял свою жизнь. Аминь. Друзья, сейчас время испытания. Мы испытываем нападки на демократию и на истину. Вирус свирепствует, растет неравенство. В случае систематического расизма климатические проблемы присутствуют в Америке и во всем мире. Но суть в том, что мы встречаемся со всеми этими вызовами одновременно. И теперь мы должны выступить все вместе. Пришло время действовать смело. Нам предстоит сделать очень многое. И я вам обещаю, что нас будут судить, вас и меня, тем, как мы решаем этот каскадирующий кризис. Сможем ли мы превозмочь в этот сложный час? Сможем мы выполнить свои обязанности и передать мир своим детям? Я уверен, и я уверен, вы тоже, мы сможем это сделать. И когда мы это сделаем, мы напишем следующую великую главу в историю Соединенных Штатов Америки. Истории, которая звучит просто как песня, которая значит для меня очень много. Это песня, которая звучит как гимн Соединенных Штатов Америки. И давайте все добавим все наши молитвы, объединим все наши молитвы воедино. И когда пройдут эти дни испытаний, Наши дети поймут, что мы смогли все преодолеть. И я начну свой первый день с обещания. Я всегда буду с вами. Я буду защищать Конституцию, я буду защищать нашу демократию, буду защищать Америку. И я дам... Я сделаю все возможное, служа вам на благо нашего общества, чтобы мы все вместе смогли написать американскую историю надежды, а не страха, объединения, а не разъединения, света, а не темноты, уважения и достоинства, любви и излечения, величия и доброты. Пусть именно эта история нас ведет, история, которая нас вдохновляет, история, которая нам говорит, что впереди, перед нами еще лежат многие века демократии и надежды, справедливости и истины, в течение которых мы будем процветать, что Америка достигла безопасности в своих границах и является примером для других. Именно это мы должны передать дальнейшим поколениям. И таким образом мы приступим к выполнению обязательств наших обязательств. Да благословит Господь Америку и защитит Господь наши войска. Спасибо большое, Америка.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Garth Brooks to perform Amazing Grace.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. If I can ask you to sing this last verse with me, not just the people here, but the people at home, at work, as one, united. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see.
Hard not to be reminded of President Obama's singing that same song at the Mother Emanuel Church. A song that in our culture is as close to both poetry and prayer as you could possibly come. And we're going to finish with those two things. Let me introduce Amanda Gorman, our nation's first ever National Poet Laureate.
Mr. President, Dr. Biden, Madam Vice President, Mr. Emhoff, Americans, and the world. When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace, in the norms and notions of what just isn't always just is. And yet the dawn is ours before we knew it. Somehow we do it. Somehow we've weathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished. We, the successors of a country and a time where a skinny black girl descended from slaves and raised by a single mother can dream of becoming president, only to find herself reciting for one. And yes, we are far from polished, far from pristine, but that doesn't mean we are striving to form a union that is perfect. We are striving to forge our union with purpose, to compose a country committed to all cultures, colors, characters, and conditions of man. And so we lift our gazes not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. We close the divide because we know to put our future first, we must first put our differences aside. We lay down our arms so we can reach out our arms to one another. We seek harm to none and harmony for all. Let the globe, if nothing else, say this is true. That even as we grieved, we grew, that even as we hurt, we hoped, that even as we tired, we tried, that we'll forever be tied together, victorious, not because we will never again know defeat, but because we will never again sow division. Scripture tells us to envision that everyone shall sit under their own vine and fig tree, and no one shall make them afraid. If we're to live up to our own time, then victory won't lie in the blade, but in all the bridges we've made. That is the promise to glade the hill we climb if only we dare it, because being American is more than a pride we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it. We've seen a force that would shatter our nation rather than share it, would destroy our country if it meant delaying democracy. And this effort very nearly succeeded. But while democracy can be periodically delayed, it can never be permanently defeated. In this truth, in this faith we trust, for while we have our eyes on the future, history has its eyes on us. This is the era of just redemption. We feared it at its inception. We did not feel prepared to be the heirs of such a terrifying hour, but within it we found the power to author a new chapter, to offer hope and laughter to ourselves. So, while once we asked, how could we possibly prevail over catastrophe? Now we assert, how could catastrophe possibly prevail over us? We will not march back to what was, but move to what shall be, a country that is bruised but whole, benevolent but bold, fierce and free. We will not be turned around or interrupted by intimidation, because we know our inaction and inertia will be the inheritance of the next generation. Our blunders become their burdens. But one thing is certain: if we merge mercy with might and might with right, then love becomes our legacy and change our children's birthright. So let us leave behind a country better than the one we were left. With every breath from my bronze-pounded chest, we will raise this wounded world into a wondrous one. We will rise from the gold-limbed hills of the West. We will rise from the wind-swept Northeast, where our forefathers first realized revolution. We will rise from the lake-rimmed cities of the Midwestern states. We will rise from the sun-baked South. We will rebuild, reconcile, and recover in every known nook of our nation, in every corner called our country. Our people, diverse and beautiful, will emerge battered and beautiful. When day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it. For there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it.
Thank you, Amanda Gorman. Now for our benediction, I'm pleased to introduce Reverend Dr. Sylvester Beeman, the pastor of the Bethel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Wilmington, Delaware, a friend of President Biden for 30 years.
As a nation and people of faith gathered in this historical moment, let us unite in prayer. God, we gather under the beauty of your holiness and the holiness of your beauty. We seek your face, your smile, your warm embrace. We petition you once more in this celebration. We pray for divine favor upon our President, Joseph R. Biden, and our First Lady, Dr. Jill Biden, and their family. We further ask that you would extend the same favor upon our Vice President, Kamala D. Harris, and our second gentleman, Doug Emhoff, and their family. More than ever, they and our nation need you. We need you, for in you we discover our common humanity. In our common humanity, we will seek out the wounded and bind their wounds. We will seek healing for those who are sick and diseased. We will mourn our dead. We will befriend the lonely, the least, and the left out. We will share our abundance with those who are hungry. We will do justly to the oppressed, acknowledge sin, and seek forgiveness, thus grasping reconciliation. In discovering our humanity, we will seek the good in and for all our neighbors. We will love the unlovable, remove the stigma of the so-called untouchables. We will care for our most vulnerable, our children, the elderly, emotionally challenged, and the poor. We will seek rehabilitation beyond correction. We will extend opportunity to those locked out of opportunity. We will make friends of our enemies. We will make friends of our enemies. People, your people, shall no longer raise up weapons against one another. We will rather use our resources for the national good and become a beacon of life and goodwill to the world. And neither shall we learn hatred anymore. We will lie down in peace and not make our neighbors afraid. In you, O God, we discover our humanity. In our humanity, we discover our commonness. Beyond the difference of color, creed, origin, political party, ideology, geography, and personal preferences. We'll become greater stewards of your environment, preserving the land, reaping from it a sustainable harvest, and securing its wonder and miracle-giving power for generations to come. This is our benediction, that from these hallowed grounds, where slaves labored to build this shrine and citadel to liberty and democracy, let us all acknowledge, from the indigenous Native American to those who recently received their citizenship, from the African American to those whose foreparents came from Europe and every corner of the globe, from the wealthy to those struggling to make it, from every human being regardless of their choices, that this is our country. As such, teach us, O God. As such, teach us, O God, to live in it, love in it, be healed in it, and reconcile to one another in it, lest we miss kingdom's goal. To your glory, majesty, dominion, and power forever. Hallelujah. Glory, hallelujah. In the strong name of our collective faith, amen.
Please remain standing as the Armed Forces Color Guard retires our national colors. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated and remain in your seats while the President and official party depart the platform. For safety reasons, your ushers will release your section in an organized manner, following the playing of our national march, The Stars and Stripes Forever.
Thank you all. A lot of work for you. Thank you.